Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive.
Hello.
Today, we're really plunging into some fundamental questions, stuff about how we figure out what's real, what's reliable.
And why we believe the things we do. It gets pretty deep.
It does. Our source for this deep dive is an essay by Kulawul Rafiu Ismail. It's called Truth, Fact, and the Truth Bearer.
And this piece, well, it really challenges the everyday way we tend to think about fact and truth, suggesting they might be, quite different animals altogether.
Exactly. So the mission here really is to pull out the key insights from this essay. We want to look at the core differences the author sees between fact, truth, and belief.
And what those distinctions mean for you, for how you see the world, how you gain knowledge.
Right, and maybe even how you live a life with purpose. We're going to touch on why a fact isn't automatically a truth in this view. How truth isn't just something one person knows, but maybe something built together collectively.
And why belief seems to operate in a completely separate space from, say, understanding or trust.
Yeah, we're aiming to extract the most important nuggets from this specific source.
Okay, so the starting point. The author lays down this really striking premise right away. Fact and truth, not interchangeable.
Which is kind of mind-bending because we use them.
All the time, yeah. But the essay says they're epistemologically distinct.
Okay, fancy term. What does that actually mean?
It just means they belong to fundamentally different categories, different ways of knowing things.
Gotcha. So how does the source define fact then, if it's not truth?
Fact is described as observable, cyclic, phenomenological.
Phenomenological.
Yeah, meaning related to phenomena, things that happen. Think of it as the pattern you can repeatedly verify.
Okay, like an experiment.
Sort of. If you see the sun rise today, and rose yesterday and the day before, that repeatable observation, that pattern, helps establish the fact of the sun rising.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing these consistent phenomena.
Okay, like water boiling at 100 degrees Celsius, at sea level. You can test it, repeat it, the pattern holds. So that's a fact in this definition.
Exactly. But truth is different.
How so?
Truth, according to the source, doesn't just come from watching something happen over and over again. It emerges from something the author calls relational coherence.
Relational coherence.
And shared validation. It's more about how different accounts or observations fit together and critically are agreed upon by others.
Okay, this sounds like where the example comes in. The source talks about two people, right? A and B.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine A and B both hear a sound. Just plot the sound.
Okay.
Now, for A, their experience of that sound is totally real. For B, same thing, their experience is real.
Sure.
But, and this is the key bit in this framework, neither of their individual perceptions just on their own is a fact or a truth yet.
Why not? It happened to them.
Because a fact, in this view, isn't a private possession. It's not owned by one person's lonely experience. To establish the fact of where the sound came from, its source, A and B would need to, talk. Interact, compare notes. They'd analyze the sound together, maybe thinking about, wave frequencies or how quickly the sound faded. The fact emerges collectively through their shared analysis as they try to pinpoint the origin.
So a fact is something collective, built from shared observation and analyzing patterns together. Okay, I think I get that part. Now, you said truth emerges through relational coherence and shared validation. How does that piece work?
Right, that's the next step. And it involves bringing in a third party, let's call him C. The author uses the term naive.
Naive C, okay. So C comes along.
And this is where truth enters the equation. C listens to A's account of the sound and then listens to B's separate account.
Right, here's both sides of the story, so to speak.
Exactly. And C starts comparing them.
Right.
C might try to verify their claims by checking for consistency between the two stories.
Do they line up? Do they make sense together?
Yeah, do they line up logically? Do they resonate with C's own understanding or maybe C's own experiences? This whole verification process, it builds a sort of a relational bridge between A, B, and C.
Okay, and this is where C becomes the truth bearer. Is that the term?
That's the term the author uses.
Yeah.
And the essay makes a really powerful point here. Truth isn't necessarily established because the narrative is like 100% objectively accurate in some grand external sense. It's established because the accounts converge, they seem coherent to C, and C accepts and agrees with that converged narrative. C believes them, essentially.
Wow. Okay. So truth in this view isn't like finding a gold nugget that was always there.
Not quite. It's more like a communal agreement. It results from validating different interpretations, seeing how they resonate, how they align over time among individuals. It's built, constructed, not just found.
That completely flips the script on how I usually think about truth. Not as this absolute out there thing,
Right.
but as something we sort of construct and agree on through interaction and checking with each other.
It's a significant redefinition, yeah. And it leads us straight into the third concept, belief. Because the essay draws a very, very sharp line here. Belief, it says, is fundamentally different from truth, operates in a totally separate realm.
How different? I mean, the source calls belief a hypnotic proposition. That sounds, well, not very complimentary.
No, it doesn't. It's called hypnotic because, according to this essay, belief is sustained by ambiguity or by incomplete understanding.
Unlike fact, which you can check and repeat.
Right. Or truth, which is grounded in that shared validation and coherence we just talked about. Belief in this framework isn't based on that kind of external checking or shared agreement. It can't be replicated or proven through shared experience in the same way. It lives in the gaps.
The author uses some big examples here, right? Like the origin of life or maybe the concept of God.
Yes. And the point being made, just to be clear, presenting the source's view impartially here, is that if the origin of existence is simply put down to, say, a supernatural preference or some ultimate mystery, then our ability to know anything about those origins, our epistemology, gets kind of stuck. It remains obscured by that mystery.
So the source is suggesting that belief systems often pop up when we're bewildered, when we don't understand something.
That's the idea presented,
Yeah.
that they can arise from bewilderment rather than from, say, understanding or verified knowledge.
And again, just laying out the source's specific argument,
Yeah.
it says that belief in such entities isn't actually necessary to explain the functional, complex, symbiotic mechanisms of life that we can observe and analyze.
Right. From this viewpoint, life's meaning isn't found in it being fundamentally mysterious, but rather in its ongoing, evolving complexity that we can study.
So it's offering this alternative, meaning found in that observable complexity and evolution, rather than relying on unexplained mystery. That's the specific perspective in this source.
Exactly. It's a contrasting way to look for meaning.
Okay, so we've got fact, the collective verifiable pattern, truth, the communal validated coherence, and belief, sustained by ambiguity, not really verifiable in the same way. What about thought itself? Does the source talk about how we even come up with ideas?
It does, briefly. It suggests that all thoughts, all ideas start from these subtle perceptions of possibility. The notion is that no potential idea is inherently ordinary. It's just unrealized potential until its necessary parts, its complementary components come together and align.
And that alignment gives it power, coherence.
Potency, yeah. Potency comes from coherence. It needs to fit together to have force.
Okay, and this ties into another idea in the essay about completeness or finality, like death, for instance.
Yeah.
The source sees this idea of finality as problematic. Why is that?
Well, because the idea of something being truly complete implies a full stop, a cessation, an end.
Right.
And the essay argues this contradicts the fundamental nature of life itself, which it presents as constantly evolving, adapting, changing, dynamic.
Life needs dynamism to keep going. And here's a really key point the source makes. Inquisitiveness.
Yes.
That urge to question, to explore, to find out more. It's presented almost as a survival imperative for life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is where belief, according to the source, can become a real obstacle.
That's so.
Because if belief substitutes certainty for curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
if you think you already have the final answer,
You stop asking questions.
exactly, that essential drive to be inquisitive can just shut down. It can inhibit that vital process.
It short-circuits the engine of discovery in a way. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. How do we navigate interactions with others? Agreement, disagreement, doubt, trust. The essay touches on this too.
It does. It points out something we probably all experience.
Yeah?
Agreement or disagreement isn't always about pure logic or evidence, right?
Definitely not.
Different perceptions can stubbornly hang on, even when you show someone clear evidence that contradicts their view.
Yeah, that happens. What about doubt? Where does that come from?
Doubt, in this description, often just arises involuntarily. It's seen as a product of some underlying psychological friction or dissonance.
So not always a conscious choice.
Not necessarily. It can be influenced by things like unconscious attraction, repulsion, how much time has passed, our basic perceptions.
Yeah.
It's complex.
Okay. Now, trust. this is a big one. The source gives trust a very specific condition. It must be post-experiential. What on earth does that mean for you, the listener?
It means you have to understand something or someone first. You need to get a handle on their potential range, their capabilities, and also their actual limits.
Their potential and kinetic limits, I think was the phrase.
That's the one. You need to know that before you can place rational trust in them, or it demands prior knowledge.
Knowledge built on what?
Experience, observation, evidence.
Okay, so it's like knowing a bridge can hold a certain amount of weight because engineers tested the materials, maybe they watched how it performed under load over time. You trust the bridge based on that knowledge.
Precisely. You understand its capabilities and limitations through experience or evidence before you rely on it.
And here's the kicker, right? What happens if that knowledge is missing?
Ah, yes. Here's the crucial consequence, according to this essay. If that prior knowledge or experience is absent, if you don't understand the potential and kinetic limits, then trust, in this specific framework, it collapses. It collapses into belief.
Whoa, okay. So belief in this context is characterized as that leap into the unknown.
Yeah, whereas trust is presented as a grounded step, one based firmly on understanding and knowledge.
That really reframes trust. It's not just about faith or optimism.
No, it's presented as a direct function of knowledge and validated experience. Less feeling, more knowing.
Interesting. The source also has this fascinating take on humans ourselves. We're seen as adaptive, responsive systems, much like other systems in nature.
That's right. Our bodies are described almost like transceivers, constantly receiving and sending out subtle inputs.
Subliminal inputs.
Yeah, subliminal inputs, both internal and external. And we're modulated by these forces, constantly adjusting.
But humans are different, right? We have consciousness, language.
Well, the key difference, the source highlights, isn't that we're fundamentally separate, but that we have much greater complexity in how we perceive and interpret those inputs, especially through symbolic thought, like language.
But the underlying principle is the same.
It seems so. Despite our complexity, the fundamental rule, according to this view, remains the same as for all systems. Human consciousness, our actions, they rely on relational interdependence. We're part of a bigger web, a larger dynamic.
And time plays a role in this too.
A big one. The essay suggests that basic forces building them, action, attraction, repulsion, response, they're kind of inert, sitting there. Until time activates them. Time sets them in motion.
Okay. And there was something about a gap.
Yes, within that constant flow, that oscillation of time, there's apparently a tiny interval, a gap.
And this gap allows for...
Well, according to this perspective, it allows for the illusion of free will, or completely independent decision-making.
An illusion.
In this view, yes. It's seen as just a brief moment, a flicker, within a much larger, interdependent, time-activated process. Not true independence.
Okay, wow. Lots to chew on there. So, bringing all these threads together, the different natures of fact, truth, belief, the importance of staying curious, how trust works, seeing ourselves as these complex systems, where does the source suggest we find meaningful human existence? What's the path?
It seems to find meaning in activities like analysis, exploration, creation, and redefinition.
Redefinition.
Yeah, constantly reevaluating and reshaping our understanding. These activities, grounded in inquiry and engaging actively with the world, are presented as the way towards purpose.
And there's a strong warning attached, circling back to belief, isn't there?
There is. When belief gets detached from verifiable knowledge, from actual experience, this source argues it becomes an obstacle, a roadblock to that kind of purposeful living.
Because, remind us why.
Because, as we discussed, belief in this framework thrives on ambiguity, on the unknown. Whereas purposeful living, as defined here, demands curiosity, questioning, discernment, knowing versus not knowing.
So if we were to try and distill the author's advice from this essay, maybe to some practical takeaways for living meaningfully.
Okay, let's try. To live meaningfully, remain inquisitive. Don't stop asking questions.
Got it. Keep exploring. What else?
To trust appropriately, you have to know. Understand first. Base it on experience or evidence.
Okay. Trust follows knowledge.
To bear truth, you need to participate in that shared communal process. Verification, agreement. It's social.
Right. Truth isn't solitary, and maybe the biggest one.
And crucial for growth, perhaps the hardest part. You must be willing to question everything, even your deepest convictions, the things you feel most sure about.
Because why? Why question those?
Because, in this framework, truth isn't some static destination you reach and then just possess.
It's not a fixed point?
No. It's presented as a continually negotiated reality, something that shifts and evolves as our understanding grows, as our relationships deepen, as we keep verifying.
Wow. Okay. That is a profound shift in perspective, taking
Mhm.
us all the way from just hearing a simple sound
Yeah.
to a whole framework for understanding knowledge, trust, belief, and even purpose.
It definitely provides a challenging structure, but a coherent one, I think, for dissecting some of these really fundamental concepts we grapple with every single day.
Absolutely. And hopefully for you listening, this deep dive into Kolawol Rafiu Ishmael's essay has given you some valuable clarity, maybe some new ways to think about the facts you encounter,
Hmm.
the truths you share or are told, and the beliefs you hold on to.
It certainly encourages a more active stance, doesn't it? A more questioning stance towards how we build our picture of the world.
It really does. So as you go about your day, maybe carry this final thought with you, drawn from the source material we discussed.
Yeah.
The idea that real growth might actually require you to question even your deepest, most cherished convictions.
Or maybe dwell on that other big idea. The truth itself isn't something you just find lying around. It's something that's constantly being negotiated and built right here among us.
Definitely something to mull over.